Hello, this is Zack Milliron from FL Teams, and I am your Tampa Bay Lightning NHL correspondent. I wanted to touch on a trade that happened in the Tampa Bay Lightning division, and it's between the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames. Now, Isaac did a tremendous job last night breaking the trade as soon as it happened, but I just wanted to go a little more in depth in it. So, in case you're just figuring it out, the Florida Panthers traded for Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames. Now, Matthew Tkachuk was somebody earlier this week said that he didn't want to play in Calgary anymore. He wasn't going to sign a long-term deal. They had lost a similar player in Johnny Gaudreau, and in the exact same situation about a week ago when he all of a sudden changed his mind about re-signing with the Calgary Flames and signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So in essence, they didn't want to lose another player for nothing. Well, they found a trade partner in the Florida Panthers. So with the trade, the Florida Panthers got Matthew Tkachuk forward, okay, and a conditional fourth-round pick. But the Florida Panthers gave up a lot. They gave up fan favorite Jonathan Huberdeau, as Isaac pointed out, along with Mackenzie Weegar, Cole Schwindt, and a 2025 lottery protected first-round pick. Now, we're going to look at the picks first. The Florida Panthers GM over the last couple years have given up a first-round pick. They didn't have one this year. So they lost their first-round pick with trades in the 2023 draft, in the 2024 draft, and now in the 2025 draft. So you're going to look at 4 straight years, counting this year, that the Florida Panthers had given up their first-round pick. It might not hurt them today. It might not hurt them next year. But eventually down the line, it's going to be a grave concern for their franchise. And it's shocking that they would continue to give up first-round picks like that. Okay, so Bill Zito, GM of the Panthers, acquired Matthew Tkachuk. And with Matthew Tkachuk, what you're getting is a guy who, let's face it, he's an offensive power, just like Jonathan Huberdeau. He's 24 years old, and he's going to bring with him a 40-goal scorer, a total of 104 points last year. And being that he's 24, okay, so he's roughly 5 years younger than Jonathan Huberdeau. And they think, I'm guessing this is what the Panthers are thinking, that he'll pair very nicely on the line with fellow Florida Panther forward being Alexander Barkov. You also have the two, Barkov and now Tkachuk, that are around the similar ages. Okay, so versus Huberdeau, who is a lot older, going on to 30 years old, you get a guy now in Tkachuk who's 24, and Alexander Barkov, so they're more around the same age and can play a lot longer long term. Which brings me to my next point. As soon as they traded for Matthew Tkachuk, they went in and they signed him to a 7-year deal. Okay, I'm sorry, 8-year deal. An 8-year deal worth $9.5 million. So they locked him up for the future. So Florida Panther fans, I know that it's not great losing a fan favorite in Jonathan Huberdeau, but at least you know you have Matthew Tkachuk here, supposedly for 8 years, $9.5 million, to go along with Aaron Ekblad and all the other young rising stars that the Florida Panthers have, okay, for years to come with Alexander Barkov and all these other guys. Now, I will also say this. There was no guarantee that Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar were going to re-sign next year with the Florida Panthers. After this year, they were unrestricted free agents, which means that they could sign with whatever NHL team they wanted to sign with. So maybe they went to Panthers management earlier this year and said, hey, look, I'm going in the last year of my deal. I don't plan to re-sign here. Or maybe the Panthers ownership went to those two players and said, hey, we're really not going to be able to keep you. One of the things also to keep in mind with the flat salary cap this year, the NHL teams hope that it goes up next year and in future years, but the likelihood that they could have kept both of these players, in Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, is not as greatly of a chance because of that salary cap. They have so much money invested in Bobrovsky that it's hard for them to get and sign more players in the future. You look at someone like Jonathan Huberdeau, he may have wanted $10 million. Okay, I know you got Tkachuk for for $9 million or so, but I think that is why they might have made this deal, because of the fact maybe they knew that they couldn't re-sign Huberdeau and Weegar, so they said, okay, we'll get Tkachuk right now, 8 years, $9.5 million, and go from there with the future with a young core. Now, offensively, the Panthers are probably still going to lead the league next year in points scored. Okay, they were number one in the NHL last year in points, goals, points. You got it covered offensively. Defensively, with Mackenzie Weegar leaving, and I know some fans, were on the fence about Mackenzie Weegar, especially in the playoffs. He had some moments that were very questionable defensively. But now you basically have Aaron Ekblad. And it'll be interesting to see if the Florida Panthers are at least as average as they were defensively last year. Last year, at times, they really struggled defensively. Average defensively. And they were somewhat average. So now you're taking away a defender, Mackenzie Weegar, who was a really good defenseman during the regular season. So it's going to be interesting to see. You saw in the regular season with the NHL, and the Tampa Bay Lightning went through this several years ago, in that their offense was really good. Defensively, was very questionable. And they saw in the regular season, you can outscore teams. You can play those games that are 5-3, 6-4, 7-3, 8-4, and win those kind of hockey games in the regular season. But then you lock down in the playoffs defensively. It's a lot more in-your-face kind of style, that you have less space to pass the puck and shoot. And teams really locked down defensively, and that's where the Florida Panthers struggled this year in the playoffs when it came to defense. I mean, you saw some of the goals they gave up, not to open up wounds, but, guys sitting right by the crease, wide open shot. So now that they've gotten rid of Mackenzie Weegar, and they really, as of now, haven't replaced him with another high-quality defenseman, their defense is going to suffer. So, on the Calgary end, they get more than I think that they even thought they could get. At the beginning of the week, last week, during free agency, they lost Johnny Gaudreau for nothing. Johnny Gaudreau was a 40-goal scorer. And then you have Tkachuk coming out and saying, I'm not going to re-sign with Calgary either, with a year left on his deal. And so Calgary was really thinking about going into almost full rebuild mode. But then with this haul that they just got from the Florida Panthers of, getting Jonathan Huberdeau, a forward, Mackenzie Weegar, a defenseman, Cole Schwindt, a forward, a future lottery pick in the first round. That has the makings to at least give them a lot of depth and some scoring in Huberdeau to offset the loss of Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, who went to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, like I said, Isaac did an amazing, incredible job last night breaking the news of this Florida Panthers trade. This is a huge trade, not just for the Florida Panthers, not just for the Calgary Flames, but, one of the bigger trades in the NHL decade. A lot of insiders were tweeting out last night that this has the making that, years and years from now, you're going to look back on this trade and say, what team really won on this deal? Tkachuk's now signed for $9.5 million for the perceivable future of 8 years. Next year with Calgary, Huberdeau and Weegar are still unrestricted free agents. So there's no guarantee that they're going to re-sign in Calgary. So, we'll have to see really how this trade works out. In the short term, going into the 2022-2023 season, I think the Florida Panthers offensively are still going to be really good with Tkachuk. I know Huberdeau is a huge fan favorite, and he was a great offensive player. And a lot of people are asking, what in the world are the Florida Panthers doing? But Tkachuk is actually a really good offensive player. I think where they're going to continue to struggle is defensively. And, Bobrovsky obviously has not lived up to his contract that they gave him as far as being that shutdown goaltender that they thought they were getting several years ago. So it's just going to be an interesting situation for the Florida Panthers. Obviously, time will tell on this trade fully. But right now, I would say that both teams got something that they wanted. Um, you know, but maybe the Florida Panthers are going to end up suffering more on defense, and especially long term. Like I said, Florida Panthers didn't have a first round pick this year. They now don't have one for the 2023 season, 2024 season. Okay, and 2025 season, and that can long term be very, very hurtful for an organization. Put them at a grave disadvantage when it comes to building talent. They've built a lot of talent with Aaron Ekblad and Connor Verhaeghe, that they was a young player that they signed, that he grew up in the Tampa Bay system. And obviously, you have another star forward in Alexander Barkov, all right? But time will tell with them giving up all these first-round picks. In addition to defensively this year, it's going to kind of have to be a wait and see to see how they adjust without Mackenzie Weegar. So again, I just wanted to break down the trade a little bit more. Like I said, Isaac did a tremendous job for FL Teams last night, really late, around 11 o'clock, breaking the news. I know that a lot of people in South Florida are probably still waking up, and they're going to be like, wait, what? They trade Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar? They were definitely fan favorites, but trust that at least you're getting one player back in Tkachuk that's going to put the goal in the back of the net, just like Huberdeau did. And, so you're not completely negative on the trade. You got to at least look at that point of it. And the point that high probability that both Huberdeau and Weegar were not going to be able to be re-signed after this season because they were unrestricted free agents. And with the salary cap the way it is and the Florida Panthers being so up against the cap, the likelihood of them being able to re-sign both of them next year was probably slim to none. So again, stay locked into FL Teams for news just like this. As I said in my podcast video the other day, that my goal is to bring top-notch NHL coverage to you. Obviously, I cover the Tampa Bay Lightning a lot, but this was a trade that not only affected the Lightning because they play the Florida Panthers and they compete against them in the Atlantic Division, but just as a whole in the NHL, this was a huge trade that went down. And in the state of Florida, as far as hockey goes, this was a big trade that went down. Isaac kind of touched on it, and he, once again, like I said, he did a fantastic job. He kind of touched on it how, especially in an area of South Florida with the Florida Panthers, Huberdeau being such a big fan favorite, you need those guys that are fan favorites, that the average fan that's maybe not like invested 1,000% into hockey like they might be in football or baseball. They see that guy on the ice and they recognize him and they recognize the Florida Panthers by that player. So this is a huge change for their franchise as far as that goes down there. Obviously they still have Aaron Ekblad and they still have, other players that they can market. I mean, we cannot forget, obviously, Alexander Barkov, the captain. So they still have those guys they can market. Connor Verhaeghe, another, I think, big fan favorite down there. And I think Tkachuk will eventually become a fan favorite because he's going to be there for the next 8+ years. So, all hope is not lost. The Florida Panthers are still going to be competitive. They're still going to, I think, compete for possibly another President's Cup trophy, another trip to try to get to the Stanley Cup championship, Stanley Cup finals, all right? So they still have a tremendous hockey team down there. But this is definitely a trade that shapes up the Florida Panthers, and it'll be interesting to see, what happens, because they had such a great regular season, and now they've lost Claude Giroux, who went home to Ottawa. They've lost Jonathan Huberdeau. They've lost Mackenzie Weegar. Okay, that's 3 major players off of last year's team that really contributed. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of gel as a team going into training camp, preseason, and early on in the regular season. But that's about all for this trade. Obviously, we'll continue to talk about Florida Panthers and stuff as we go through the season. On my next video, on my next article, actually, I'm going to do a thorough breakdown on the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers in-state rivalry. And there's a lot of really great history behind it that I think you guys will find intriguing. And you might even learn some great information that you didn't already know. So until then, stay locked into FL Teams. Stay locked into FLTeams.com, FL Teams on YouTube, FL Teams on Apple Podcasts. That's how you guys can reach us. Please comment on this video. We'd love to hear your opinion. I would personally love to hear your opinion. What do you think of this trade for the Florida Panthers? We want to know what you guys think as fans of the Florida Panthers. We do this for the fans. FL Teams is number one about the fans and producing the best content we can for the fans. And I'm happy to be able to produce the best content I can for the NHL, and I cover the Tampa Bay Lightning. But in this case, with the Florida Panthers, I definitely had a touch on it. So anyway, stay locked into FL Teams. I'm Zack Milliron, and until next time, have a great day.